All right, what's up, New York? How's it going? I'm Russ Vacaturo, bringing you guys the 43rd episode of the Apples to Apples podcast, and another year of misery, anguish, and just flat out fucking defeat. Just pile on the city of New York. You look at, and it's been a minute because you know what? Really, the thing was, and this is, we'll get into this. Knicks and Rangers, their seasons are over. You could debate whether or not you look at them in a way of, building on something. You take your moral victories, or if it's just, simply if you don't walk away with all the hardware, the season's a failure. And we'll get into that because I think you could look at each one in a different way. But real quick at the Knicks, I think the last time I did one of these was May 14th. Was the day the Knicks went up 3-2. I believe was the exact day. Yeah. So that was game 5, was a 30-point Knicks win at MSG. And then just the tires when you thought you had enough tires to fly off the vehicle. Holy shit. You lost your spare tire, flew out the trunk, and just a couple cracked through some of the windows. Cuz game 5 felt like a blowout. The final score won't dictate that as much. You go to Indiana, it's series tied up at 3. Coming to MSG for a winner take all. And then game 7, I mean, this is the point. Game 6, Josh Hart, you talk about OG pulled the hammy. Game 2, you already had no Randall. You already had no Mitch Robinson. Boki Bogdanovich was out ever since the Philly series. It felt like the two guys that hadn't been, and even Brunson had a lingering issue, but nothing crazy. But he's like the only two that remained essentially unaffected by the injury bug were Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. Well, game 6 comes and Josh Hart essentially can't move a muscle. He goes back to the bench immediately, wincing in pain. Turns out I think it winds up being something muscular in his torso, and he makes sporadic appearances throughout the game, but he's not himself. This is a guy we're talking about who's like a 6'5". He's essentially a dwarf compared to other fours in the league, and he's leading all playoffs in like rebounds per game or so. Rebounds, but it's like averaged. And you want to talk about an absolute dog, going up, every possible rebound there is going up, all this hustle, grit, and all that. We'll talk about grit in a second. And he's not himself. When you're that kind of player and you can't move for, that's a big. He's on the court, but you're obviously handicapped there. And then so you lose that game. You come game 7. Turns out Hart's able to play, and we hear that OG's able to play, which every single game leading up to Game 7, he was a foregone conclusion he was out. And Game 7, they're saying they saw enough through shoot-around, and they must have seen him only through shoot-around, because he was 2 for 2 on the night, played like 5 minutes, you see on the box score, because this motherfucker, OG Anunoby, was going back and forth on the court in transition like he came straight out of a fucking vasectomy. I swear to God. They took him out right away. And a point I heard credit Chris McMonagle. I didn't even think of this, but you want to talk about just essentially screaming desperation by putting him in. They had him in the starting 5. Anunoby. This is a guy where, like, I just brought up every game you wrote him up for. There was no possible way he was going to play. And then you start him for Game 7. I mean, if you're Rick Carlisle over on the Pacer bench and you wind up seeing what he is on the court for those first 5 minutes, you're like, well, they're essentially waving the white flag because they backed themselves. You wouldn't say backed themselves into this corner because a lot of this was freak shit. Like, obviously, the Randall thing with Jaime Jaquez, Robinson's always just hurt, but Bogey going for the loose ball. Obviously, Hart just seemed like fatigue was catching, and a lot of people were blaming Thibodeau for the injuries. I don't think that's fair because a lot of them were in the moment kind of stuff. But obviously, Randall. Driving to the rim, which was like a minute left. It was garbage time. I think Hart and OG are the two, without a doubt, Hart, because Hart just broke down as a human being. And I think you'd say OG too because of the pulled hammy. I think those are the two you could get on Thibs for because they just essentially ran out of gas. But Game 7 hits. Hart is 50%, and OG can't even walk, let alone run. He gets taken out early. And you could say what you want about the Pacers ran into the Bucks without Giannis, and then eventually without Dame, and Chris Middleton was doing all this shit for Milwaukee, and then here come the Knicks, and they're shorthanded, and as the games went along, they got even more shorthanded. Listen, when you're an Indiana team that's shooting fucking 75, 80% from the field, I don't care if you got the Washington Wizards out there. I don't care if you got the fucking 2016 Philly 76ers. They were hit everywhere they were sinking them. Andrew Nembhard looked like fucking Curry. You had Nembhard and Obi Toppin were like the Splash Brothers. TJ McConnell was like Linsanity all over again. These guys, they couldn't miss. Miles Turner might be one of the most, if not the most, one of the most, if not the most underrated players in the league. Miles Turner, guy was doing everything in the series. This is talking to Halliburton, where he wound up, he got better as the series went along, but starting off, he was dog shit. And then even Game 7, I think most of his points were in the first half, so he was restricted. But like I brought McConnell, Nembhard, Nesmith, Miles Turner. You had Siakam was a baller towards the end of the series. He couldn't hit a free throw to save his life, but he was hitting it from everywhere else on the field. And yeah, they were halftime. This game was over, dude. It was like 70-35 or 55, but it was over, dude. And that's honestly not even so much to the fact that the Knicks were playing like shit. A, they had the injuries, but B, Indiana just couldn't miss. And then I think it was the third quarter, Brunson on a fast break by Indianapolis or Indiana fractures his hand. They don't know it in the moment. It just looked like mispositioned his hand. And we find out later in the game he fractures it. He's out for the game. And that's when you could have you could have stuck a fork in them at halftime. But even the most optimistic fans, the fork was out, ready to go, and that was a dagger on the next season. When Brunson was out, people were hitting the exits, and there was significant time left on the clock. But listen, if you're the Knicks, I don't like giving out moral victories. I think at some point, if you set a certain standard for yourself, accepting a second round exit or a third round exit, I think it's being content with mediocrity. But I think the way this Knicks team went out, the amount of what ifs that loomed over the end of the season, essentially the whole starting five getting hit with the bug, aside from DiVincenzo, if you want to consider Hartenstein part of it because of how long Mitch Robinson was out for. All right, but I mean, we were seeing reps from DaQuan Jeffries, of all people, Jericho Sims. All right, and this is a team that just basically withered away until they couldn't stand anymore. And I think there's hope to be had next year. There's obviously no guarantees. You look at this year alone. I know it's apples to oranges, but look at the Devils. One passing injury. Now, obviously, Dougie Hamilton was out for the year, but you see how impactful it wound up being. And Hughes missed some time, but you take those two off that team, that should still be a playoff team, even with how shit their goaltending is. And they just had a season from hell, no pun intended. On the Knicks, they kind of had a playoff run from hell. All right, you kind of, and all the comparisons. We'll get to comparisons too. Don't fret. Comparisons to the Reggie Miller series, I believe, was '94. With the choke. Doing it on the camera. If I could upload a video for once, Reggie Miller with the choke job gesture. He was actually on one of the TNT broadcasts, and Josh Hart was mouthing off to him. I think it was after they won Game 2. Hart went over to the TNT booth on side of the court. He said, "Listen to them. I think they're yelling fuck you." And that's kind of the guy on and off the court. Josh Hart is. He's just an antagonist. He's like an asshole, but in a funny way. And then at the end of the series, Pacers at the end of they had the press conference, and Halliburton had a hoodie with the Reggie Miller. Everybody's talking about he's like a front runner and everything. He wound up getting his teeth kicked in by Boston in 4 games, and he was hurt for the last 2, so he was kind of talking about taste of their own medicine and kind of realized it's honestly come playoffs, it's the team that could stay the healthiest is has the best shot is basically what he was saying. But the comparisons to the past and all that, and the fact that you look at this season that 50 wins and all 94 comparisons aside, just we saw it. It doesn't even need to be said how fucking anemic the Knicks organization was for years. So when you had the 21 run with Julius Randle breaking out on the scene and comes to a halting stop in 5 games to Trae Young, and what a villain he became in those 5 games. You had a little glimmer of hope. Then 22 was a mess. And 23, Brunson comes along. They traded for Hart at the deadline, and you take out Cleveland in 5 games, and you thought you had a shot against Miami being the 8th seed, but they stick it to you and eventually go on to make it to the finals. But you had a little more hope last year, and it felt like this year you go out, you get DiVincenzo, you complete the Nova Knicks trio, and now there's thoughts of a quadruple, uh, whatever you call it, bringing on Mikal Bridges, having all four from Nova, like fracking them up like fucking Infinity Stones, and but you look at this year, bringing in DiVincenzo and you make that trade early on in the year, sending Barrett and IQ to Toronto. You're bringing in an Obi, and even Precious Achua wound up being a significant piece of this team. So I think this was the year, and they took Philly out. Everybody's saying Embiid was hurt, but you take Philly out and you come within 1 game of the Eastern Conference Finals. It seems like they're taking baby steps, and I think maybe it has to do with just the state of this organization as recent as 5 years ago, and the fact that now they're genuinely looked at as a annual serious contender. They've earned the respect of ESPN and TNT and all these national shows. It's not really Knicks for clicks anymore. And you look at a guy in Jalen Brunson, really, exemplifies. Is that the word I'm looking for? But is they struck gold on a franchise-altering player, Jalen Brunson. And now you see his former team in Dallas. Everybody was talking about going from Luka, Brunson, and Porzingis, how they kind of sold the bag on that to going winding up with Luka and Kyrie, and that might just be the best. I won't say best, but one of the best backcourts of all time. It's getting legitimate Splash Brother comparisons, and I know they haven't won the title yet, but you see the run they went on, and Kyrie already being an all-time great has the ring to show for, and Luka is like 24 and has all the time in the world to extremely surpass what Kyrie's ever done. So the fact that those two are linked up on a team and are 4 wins away from an NBA title together, uh, but listen, everybody was talking about them giving up on Brunson and kind of, the fact that they didn't even negotiate with him, just letting him walk. And then everybody talked about the Knicks, what an overpayment it was. They had the tampering thing, hiring his father and all that. They found a way. They had this guy locked in for months. The season, I don't even think their season was over. They didn't make the playoffs, and they had him on the agenda. And contrary to recent Knick events, everybody thought, Knicks for clicks and all that, they overpaid the tampering. That went from one of the worst contracts in the league, opinion-wise across the league, to arguably the best currently, and you could even put it in talks for one of the best contracts the NBA has ever seen. And I think he's got. I'm not sure NBA contracts work as much, but I think he might have like a player option or something, or that might be Hart, but one of those two. Oh no, Hart just got extended. I think Brunson's got an opportunity to extend. And there is as big as explosive of a culture shift in this Knicks organization that basically felt like we'd never see the day where the Knicks would be anywhere but at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. So I think the thing with the Knicks is, yeah, this season went up in flames. The season itself, I wouldn't call it a failure. I wouldn't call it a success either, but I think you have the formula to what it takes to bring a Larry O'Brien to Manhattan. I can't say the same thing about the teams. I can't say the same thing about my hockey team. But I think you have the formula to what it takes to bring a Larry O'Brien to Manhattan. But I can't say the same thing about my hockey team. All right, you want to talk about all right an all time? This is no joke. No hyperbole, nothing, no exaggeration. Their best regular season of all time. We're talking about a team in a couple years. There's centennials coming up. All right, an original six team. You win the President's Trophy, and I know there was that, up until the final week, there were teams like Florida and Dallas and Carolina were in the mix, but you pull through, you get the President's Trophy. There's a whole thing with the curse and everything, but number one seed across the league, you match up with essentially an AHL team in Washington. Let's be honest. I mean, the second Washington lost that series, everybody got sent down to Hershey to play another fucking playoff series. You take quick business of them, and if you don't, you want to nitpick and play devil's advocate. A couple of those games, they arguably got outplayed it. But I wasn't complaining. I said you gotta sweep them, and they took care of business. So you know what, you move on. You get Carolina, and this is a Carolina team you beat 2 years ago, right? Game 7, every team had won at home up until Game 7, and you beat the living shit out of them in Game 7. And this is a Carolina team that added the much desired Jake Gensel at the trade deadline. We could get back to the trade deadline in a second. Uh, we'll look back at this as the infamous acquisitions of Alexander Wenberg and Jack fucking Roslovic. All right, but if you're Carolina, you're right up on the Rangers' tail all regular season. You go out and instead of adding two dipshit depth pieces, you go all in, get Gensel from your division rival Pittsburgh Penguins, and even Evgeny Kuznetsov, who is in 1 foot out the door in his career, but a Stanley Cup winner himself, could play both sides of the puck, and I think spent like a week in Hershey himself with Washington. I mean, the end of his tenure there was rocky, but you get to change the scenery with Carolina. And I think there's other pieces. They got Brent Burns, they got Orlov ever since the series a couple years ago. So this is a different Carolina team. And you go up 3-0. And if you want to talk about nitpicking too, let's be honest. Game 1 was a 4-3 regulation, I think. You'd say 50-50. Game 2, they did not play that good. They did not play, and it took until the second overtime on a net front goal by Trocheck. They ran away with Game 2. And then Game 3, I believe, was the one. Did they blow the lead late? I'm pretty sure. This was the 3-2, and I think Svechnikov scored with a minute 36 left. Svechnikov ties it up, and they were dog shit in that third period. This is Lafreniere he had a great first 2 periods. He played like shit for the third one, and ironically got his goal there. It was a shit play by Anderson. Or that might have been the fourth game. Regardless, they played a shit third period, and this is a story, a reoccurring story in the playoffs, which is not the case in the regular season. Third period, they play like shit. Carolina ties it with 2 minutes left, and then talk about another. I hate to use the word lucky and fluky, but I'm calling it as I saw it. Panarin with a deflection, it threw his legs like 3 minutes into OT, and you're up 3-0 now. But this is no convincing 3-0. And this is a Carolina team where the second you let them hang around, they're going to pounce. And that's exactly what they did. Game 4, you honestly didn't play half bad. Carolina, Brady Shea, talk about another, not buzzer beater, but winding minutes, dumps it in from the point. It goes top shelf. You're looking at a 3-1 series now. And when you got a chance to close it out at the Garden, Game 5, you're clinging on to a 1-0 lead for dear life, and you get absolutely shit on in the third period. You got Jordan Staal, the nifty move, and then you got the East. They got the one-timer. Carolina takes the lead. And then the third period, they just fucking shriveled up and died, basically. And they were still up 3-2. Now we genuinely have a conversation to be had of, is this the 5th time we're going to see a 3-0 lead blown in the playoffs? And Game 6 was probably their most dog shit performance of them all. Carolina, I think, was up 3-1 at the end of the first, definitely after 2. I think the first. But they were firing from all cylinders. I think Nakis was the one that had the one-timer from behind the net. 3-1 after 2. And then if it weren't from an epiphany or like a voice from the heavens from Chris Kreider, probably down to every other pack of smelling salts in that locker room, if it weren't for him, you're looking at a tied series that you were up 3-0 going back to the Garden, Kreider, you want to talk about when the season still had some hope. Everybody was making the connections, the parallels to '94. Everybody was saying this was kind of like the Timu version of the Messier with the natural hat trick in Game 6. Because Kreider, there was a quote after the game. Somebody said Kreider in the locker room said, "I'm going to go out there. I'm going to win this for us." And he did just that. And you want to talk about fluky goals and whatever? Well, that's his MO. Kreider could get away with the fluky goals because that is what he's become a well-known commodity for. And there's really nobody in the league that does it better than him. You could say maybe Hyman, maybe Joe Pavelski just retired today. Congrats to him. Long-time career with the Sharks. Stars, never got the cup, but one of the best American players of all time. But rehashing back on Kreider, that's who he is. That's how he scored 52 goals 2 or 3 years ago. And you know, he put the team on his back, cleaned up those net front pucks. That was kind of the thing too. Everything was pass, 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 and it never stopped up until the final buzzer on the season. For Carolina, they light up the shot till they have like 35, 40 shots because they just enter the zone and hock it at the net. You got a freak bounce, boom, and then Gensel had a couple redirections. But you take care of business in Game 6, and then you wait and see who wins the Florida Boston series. Winds up being Florida, takes care of Boston in 6 games as well. And when I had CeeLo on a couple episodes ago, Crystal Presti, one of the things we brought up was how Florida was coming straight off this run to the finals last year as a second wild card. And the thing he brought up was, you're looking at Florida. They were coming straight off a year where they won a President's title of their own. And, things really just weren't clicking for them to start the season. And, they got back on track towards the end of the year. And that's how, they barely snuck in. But the team was essentially the same. Well, that was Kachuk's first year. So it took a while for things to click for him. But at the end of the day, last year's team is really not much different than this year's, aside from they added Tarasenko at the deadline and Nico Mikkola will end up being the next Chris Pronger when he was Patrick fucking Nemeth with us. And I think, we'll get to it in a second, but I think there's some, bad blood there or something because he was a bitch all series, Mikkola. But you want to talk about this is a Florida team that we won the President's title over them, but fundamentally as a team top to bottom, the top 6 was arguably better. You could say we have the better stars, but the fact that 3 years and we still have a revolving door around that first right wing spot, and Kreider Mika, this bromance that of a couple years ago that clicked when they were just good hockey players, and now it seems like they're just best friends that just request to play with each other because they're shit together and they refuse to separate them. And then, you look at the goalie. We had the better goalie, and that's nothing to take away from Bobrovsky. But this series, as you watch it, this would have been a sweep if it weren't for Igor Shesterkin. Plain and simple. And listen, the depth. You look at their bottom 6 was cleared ours by a mile. Guys like Ryan Lomberg's got the similar to Josh Hart. He doesn't have the height advantage, but he is all over the ice, and he actually got scratched at one point. Guys like Kevin Stenlin. Who am I missing? Luster-Reinen. He might have been hurt. I don't remember seeing him. And then you look at their defense, too. Some of these late bloomers in their career, like Gustav Forsling, got waived by Carolina a couple years ago. All right. Brandon Montour was kind of a wanderer with Buffalo and Anaheim, and they pick him up. He's one of the better offensive D-men in the league. Ekman Larson, pretty much 1 foot out the door as well. He comes here, or he goes down to Florida, and now he's 4 wins away from his first cup, which I think is his first playoff run entirely. And I brought the top 6 before, but you look at them individually. I mean, Carter Verhaeghe was a solid depth piece with Tampa. I think he now has the most OT goals in NHL history. He's got like 5 or 6, and he's the spark plug for that power play. They got him right along with Sam Reinhart. They bring him in from Buffalo. He only scores 57 goals this year. I think he led the league in power play and shorthanded goals. I think was the stat. Obviously, Barkov, you want to talk about Bergeron passing the torch. It's Sasha Barkov, Selke to lose it from now on. Matty Tkachuk, obviously, everybody was talking about the second they let go of Huberdeau. Assist machine he was his whole career. Him and Barkov were kind of the poster boys of of this era of Panthers hockey. And they pulled the plug on Huberdeau. They pulled the trigger on him, send him up to Calgary, along with Mackenzie Weegar, who's also pretty good in his own right. Send them to Calgary for Matty Tkachuk, who is just, you want to talk about culture shift with Brunson and the Knicks. Matty Tkachuk has made the Florida Panthers a force to reckon with for the foreseeable future. And he wasn't even that great this series himself. But there's just something he brings to that team, a certain energy that has completely shifted the narrative around what once was as irrelevant of a franchise in the NHL is now probably the model franchise in the whole league. All right, so game one at MSG, Rangers, I don't know what happened. They probably OD'd on melatonin or something before the game, but they essentially didn't show up at all. It was 1-0. Ironically, I think the goal was from, forgot who scored the first goal. Second goal was an own goal. I think, did Lundell have the first goal? I'm not sure. Either way. Second goal was an own goal off the stick of Lafreniere. And we were getting shift for it. Everybody, Devil fans, everybody, they were putting like the J Fresh cards were like own goal percentage, and it was 100, and we weren't hearing the end of it. But you know what? That mostly fell in the hands of, and I hate blaming Igor. And listen, I was the first person to hit the podium and say and give Igor shit in December, January when he deserved it. All right, but this playoffs run would have came to a crashing stop if it weren't for Igor Shesterkin the way he was playing. So there's one guy I'm going to devoid of all blame and shit talk. It's Igor Shesterkin, because it seems like his Achilles heel is playing the puck. He just gets anxious when it comes rolling over to him. Always feels the need to play it. Every once in a while, he whiffs on a pass, and you set up a golden opportunity for him in your zone. But that's what happened. That game there was like 3 minutes left. They caught the empty netter, 3-0, and just a no-show by the Rangers. In game two, they look better. All right, they don't look like their complete selves. It took a Barclay Goodrow top shelf snipe from basically the other end of the ozone in OT. And what I was saying before was kind of, just skating to the zone, just hock it at the net. Worst case scenario, you get a net front bounce. And that's what happened to Hedl a couple minutes before, having an Alec Martinez type play. He's a lefty. And he shot it at Oliver Ekman-Larsson's ass. If not, he had a wide open net. And that was, they just dumped it in from the point. So that's kind of what Goodrow did, goes top shelf. It's a tied series. We're going down to Florida. And this game three, you're looking at a series that had 6 goals combined up until game three. I think it was 2-2 after one. Goodrow they scored twice in like 2 minutes. Laffy had and this kind of seems to be his trademark move now, the backhand on the breakaway, top high glove side. If it's a lefty, high glove side. He did it to Columbus in the shootout. He did it here, tied the game at 1 because Reinhart had a goal like a minute in because Keandre Miller doesn't know how to clear a fucking puck. And then Goodrow, like a minute later, weird deflection, they take the lead. And then basically the exact carbon copy of Reinhardt's goal a minute in happens all over again. It's like side of the net. He just throws it at Igor, and it slips through on an errant puck clear and attempt by Miller again. And Miller was solid, so I'm not going to get, for the most part. But game three was horrible. So you got Reinhart on Hattie Watch, and after 2, Rangers are up 4-2. Now you got Reinhart, Lafreniere on maybe one of the better goals you'll see in a playoff run. He weaved through pretty much coast to coast. I think it was from the red line. Semi coast to coast. He had like this nifty move through 2 defenders and on a backhand, and then kicked Brubowski in the head on the way down. And then Goodrow had some wicked shit. He had a one-timer from the boards. And they go up 4-2. And then game 3, if you want to talk about where this series really shifted, I don't think they were dog shit game 1. And I don't even think they played their best hockey at game 2. Game 3, that third period was the kiss of death on the 2023-2024 New York Rangers. Every single time the Rangers touched the puck was a failed attempt to break out of the neutral zone. An errant pass, skating through a defender, just flat out overskating the puck. I'm looking at you, Jack Roslovic. All right. And every single time a Florida Panther touched the puck, they cut into the zone like a knife through butter. They had the passes back. Nobody was guarding a defender. They would dump it behind the net. There was always a Panther on the sideboard. They had no problem passing east-west. No problem passing east-west, which the Rangers love to do, and still have no fucking clue on how to do it because everything's a turnover. Florida, and the thing with the Panthers, if you notice, it's the and I'm not going to try to come on here and talk X's and O's because I'm no Stan Bowman, I'm no Joel Quenneville. I played 2 weeks of hockey in my life, and it was a junior devil camp, and I quit because I couldn't fucking skate. But you don't need to be Ken Hitchcock, Quenneville, Scott Bowman, any of these guys to realize the way the Panthers play the game of hockey. They just suffocate you in your own zone. It's a forecheck on steroids. Every fucking time the Rangers had the puck, they were pushed. They were being pressed on the boards. There was one play. I think it was game 3. The puck spent like 30 seconds on the blue line. Every single time the Rangers tried to clear it, it was like there was a brick wall there. And credit to guy brought up Forsling, and Forsling is going to be a problem for years, man. Everybody talking about Ekblad being the first overall pick. That's Forsling's decor. And dude, I brought up Barkov too with the Selkies. By far the best defensive center in the league, and we got guys like Kopitar and Jordan Stahl still, hanging in there. Barkov is on another level. All right. And this is the third period where I think I don't know what it was specifically in the third period, but there's the shot attempts. Florida had 65 more shot attempts in the entire game. And a lot of it had to have been in the third period. Because the fact that they didn't go up, take the lead, and then add to it, because it was 4-2 Rangers going in. The fact that wasn't a 7-4 Panthers final in regulation is a testament to the kind of goalie Igor was for this 6-game set. And they had I forgot the third goal went in, but the fourth one was Forsling right off the draw, threw it at the net and perfectly lined it up with the top left corner, and they tied it right then and there. And then I swear to God, the final 3 minutes, you could have set up sleeping bags in the Rangers zone. That puck was not leaving the zone, and every other pass was a shot on net. I think it was Reinhard Bennett, somebody they had wide open on a turnover. Igor makes the cross-crease save, and the fact that game was not a Panthers win in regulation, and you go to OT, and they're still playing like shit. And it's off a draw with like 6 minutes in. You get a fluke deflection from Alexander Wenberg, of all people, and the fact that he had like 1 goal up until this point, and I think it was like they were down 3 goals to Winnipeg or some shit in March. They brought him in to be a faceoff. He can't even win faceoffs, but he had the OT winner, barely clipped his stick, and had just enough room under the top, the crossbar, and they take a 2-1 series lead, but you have to have a sick taste in your mouth if you watch that game because you realize they got dog walked. And game 4 was no better. It might have been worse. It was first period, I wouldn't say they were buzzing, but they looked good. Second period, that second period I think was their worst one of the series. They completely fell off a cliff. And this is what I realized at one point in time was this team is fucking allergic to playing a 60-minute game. It seems every period, it's like, they go through ebbs and flows where every game has to have at least one monstrosity of a period. And it felt like if they came out buzzing after one, the third period was an implosion. So I was saying at one point, just tank the first 2 periods and play your best hockey in the third, because that's what Florida did for game 3. And I wasn't even saying they were playing like shit for the first 2 periods. But there's like a requirement for the Rangers to doze off through a 20-minute set. So saying if you're going to slack through a period, let it be early and keep this comeback kid notion you've had all year. They had everybody flashing the set. They had the most comeback wins. When they scored 4 or more goals, they've won all but 1 game on the whole season. Was that game early on in Minnesota? All these stats throughout the season. And it all meant nothing because the kind of team they were for the regular season was night and day for the shit show that they reverted back into that was basically mirrored what they were in 2022. Everybody talking about they were ahead of schedule, which was absolutely true. They were people were looking at that season where if they slipped in as a wild card, that was kind of their ceiling. They slip into the 2 seed. They come back from down 3-1 against Pittsburgh. They come back from down 3-2 and 2-0 against Carolina. And then they go up 2-0 against Tampa and lose 4 straight. Ran out of gas in the season. The season to remember. Kind of like what I brought up with the Knicks last year. Was obviously sucked to go down, but that was a season you were ahead of schedule, and you could look at it. House money, nothing to lose, and this team has some hope. And last year was they go all in. Tarasenko, Kane, the fucking implosion. Jersey after the two blowouts in the first 2 games, we were up 2-0. Jersey just took a hold of that series. But you look at this year. And it seemed like they came out of the gates flying in the regular season. There was a legitimate conversation of this can't happen again, where you let Jersey hang around and they just took you by the throat and put your season to an end. They go on and brought up the President's Trophy and all these stats. This wasn't a team relying on Igor anymore. And so much so, I brought up too much, December, January. This was a team playing despite Igor, how shit he was. They had Jonathan Quick pushing 40, was starting games night in and night out. This team did not have to rely on elite goaltending. I came to this conclusion the other day. This team went from Richter to Lundqvist. You could even throw in Van Beesbrook before Richter. They went from Van Beesbrook to Richter to Lundqvist to Shesterkin with maybe 1 or 2 filler years in between. But there's not much in between. And you want to talk, and talking about goalies a couple days ago, coming straight off the Game 6 of the season over, we got the news. Benny Allaire, longtime goalie coach of 20 plus years, widely known across the league, the best goalie coach to maybe ever do it. He's taken a step back this year. He's essentially 1 foot out that he's essentially about to retire. And I was thinking, having the elite goalie, obviously this team has been spoiled with some of the best to ever do it. It's like they don't know what it's like to play with a mid goalie. And even you want to talk about not only them, but, Benny Allaire, guys like Cam Talbot and Georgiev that flourish under his wings. They don't know what it's like to have a mediocre goalie. And what I realized, or I think could be the case, is this team half-asses every shift they play. They could play as shit as possible because they know they're going to have one of the best in the league between their creases, or between in the crease between the posts on the other end of the ice. And you look at it with Lundqvist, and I saw an Instagram comment today or something like, if you don't extend Igor, don't expect to see a cup in your life. Well, they extended Hank. Where's the fucking cup? When they had Richter, aside from 94. And 94 was a year where they were on the doorstep of their season being done in 6 against Jersey and needed to declare the win. And you'll even get a hater, you'll get a devil's advocate that's going to say they bought that team. You know what? In this case, at this point, the fact that this is the one they have in 80 years, and you'll get people too that say, well, they bought that team. Well, you know what? At this point, you're so desperate as an organization, you'll take it. But the fact that you go through all this elite goaltending, you don't skip a beat in between, and this team doesn't know what it's like to play desperate without having a mediocre, or God forbid, a garbage goalie in their net. I don't think there's enough desperation in this team. You look at, not talk about this year, the 2 prior Stanley Cup champions. You had Vegas go from Marc-Andre Fleury to Adin Hill. And we're talking about Fleury. I know he was late in his career, but that was his only Vezina trophy. And then the year before that, you had Colorado go from Semyon Varlamov for all those years to Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper and Adin Hill were the last 2 cup-winning goaltenders. And I know how vital the position is. I think it's the second most important position in sports, aside from the quarterback. And everybody says compares it to the QB situation out in Green Bay. You went from Favre to Rodgers, and now you got Jordan Love. I think the difference is you have a quarterback. The team revolves around the quarterback, whereas the goalie, that's kind of a last resort of like oh shit, we just got beat in the neutral zone. Hopefully we have a guy like Shesterkin or Vasilevsky or Connor Hellebuck in our net. But that seems to be the case when every year in and year out, and when this season felt different, where you weren't relying on a Hail Mary by Igor on the other end of the net. contrary to 2 years ago. And hell, if you even want to say last year, everybody was saying with Gallant's strategy was to just hope and pray he had Igor on a good night. That wasn't the case this year, but it was damn well was the case for this playoff run, specifically against Carolina and especially against Florida. And game 4 was a carbon copy of the game 3 implosion. They just got their teeth kicked in their zone. It goes to OT again. You got three games in a row go to OT. The Rangers are 4-0 up until this point. They took the 2 against Carolina. They took the last 2 against Florida. And it's kind of back to that notion of, whatever which way they find a way to pull through with these wins, no matter how badly they're outplayed. Wasn't the case in game 4. You only could play with fire for so long because you have Mika, and we'll get to individual players, but how dog shit Mika was in this series, and overall before up until Washington or after Washington, with the errant pass in the offensive zone. Leads to the 2-on-1, and then Blake Wheeler in his first game back from what we thought would be career-ending knee surgery or a knee injury, has to take the penalty, and there's a debate to be had if it should be a penalty shot or not. We'll never know. And they get the power play, and 30 seconds in, Reinhart on the one-timer. Florida takes the win. They should have taken both wins. And if we're being honest, that should have ended the series. Because the way they were outplayed in Florida from first puck drop in game 3 to the last buzzer in game 4 was just absolutely fucking disgusting. I bring up it was shades of 2 years ago, and I don't want this to be lost in translation. 2 years ago was a fun season, and what I brought up with the Knicks, you can make the case that you could say, well, I'll be back next year, which I hate to say there's guarantees, but they even kind of dipped off from their expectations last year, regular season wise, getting into the 3 seed, not having home ice in the first round. But that was a season to hold your head high about. And you could get away with trading for the Vetranos and the Andrew Copps, who wound up being pretty significant pieces, Vetrano especially. And even Tyler Mott, they got for that fourth line. He wound up being great, so much so they traded for him the year after. But this year, the fact that you treated the deadlines the exact same, and just overall treated the team the exact same, when one team was do or die and the other was we'll probably be back next year, it just shows you everything that's wrong with the way this organization interprets itself. And, you come back to MSG for a game 5. Florida set. No, the Rangers actually scored first for a change. You had the breakaway by Kreider. Up until this point, you had a combined 0 goals from Artemi Panarin, Chris Kreider, and Mika Zibanejad. 0 fucking goals. And 2 points. I think Panarin had 2 secondary assists. And Fox is on the one knee. Trouba is just shit entirely. I don't even know why we have expectations for him. And this is the same old song and dance. So they wind up inevitably blowing game 5. Florida ties it up in the first. It's tied at 1 going to 3. Basically, on script from game 5 against Tampa 2 years ago, was tied at 1 going into the third period, and they went ahead with a minute left, I think, was Sergachev. We were maybe saved an ounce of grief this year. We got it early. We got it with 9 minutes left. I think Sam Bennett had the go-ahead goal. And then they had an empty netter, and that was all she wrote for game 5. And then game 6, I definitely know Sam Bennett had the first goal on the night. And just like last year, game 7, just like 2 years ago in game 6, they just had no desire to keep the series going. No desire to keep the season alive. No desire to show a sense of urgency and show if we lose this game, there goes the greatest season in the history of the 98-year-old New York Rangers. They treated this game like a Tuesday night game against the St. Louis Blues. And the fact that real quick, game 5 was a 3-2 final because he had the final kick in the nuts. Lafreniere had the goal with a minute left. He said, where was this for the last 9 minutes? And then when we thought that was bad enough, here comes the game-winning goal for Florida to end the series was from Vladimir Tarasenko, who he himself, by the way, a familiar face, was on the team last year and wasn't bad. He wasn't the reason they lost the series, but was part of the implosion, the team that imploded last year. And you have him this entire series with Florida didn't have a point and was one of the few underperformers on the team. Has the game-winning goal, the series-winning goal, and then with a minute left, his buddy from Russia, when they brought Kane in last year too, everybody was saying, myself included, the Panarin Kane. Well, it wound up being Panarin and Tarasenko. Well, Panarin only scores his first goal of the series with a minute and a half left on the season. Everybody was telling him, just shoot it at the fucking net. And what he the pass, the dance with the stars, the skills competition, he just throws it at the net with a minute left. It goes in. I would have been livid if I had a Bobrovsky shutout prop, because they were a no-show for 58 minutes, and you had to have that strip tease with a minute left. A minute left. It's every single year with this team. They can never lose like a normal organization. There's got to be a tease, that final, winding seconds of hope. You can never just go with the sunset. And even last year when they got 4-0 shutout and embarrassed by the Jersey, the tease came early. It was the 2-0. The 2 blowout wins to start off the series. That it doesn't matter where the tease falls in the series. It's going to fall somewhere. And just when you thought they couldn't find any more ways to break your heart, it's the cherry on top, dude. And with a minute and a half left, they get nothing going. And you see the handshake line. Florida moves on. And the greatest season in the history of the New York Rangers goes up in flames. When you thought this team was different, when they bring in Peter Laviolette, you thought this was a culture change. Nope. Just like every single year, every single time this team goes on a deep run, aside from 2014, they found a way to get past Montreal, and then they got absolutely toyed with in 5 games. And up until this point, still the last time a Stanley Cup finals ended on an OT winner. You can't go a playoff game without hearing Doc Emmerich on the mic. The Stanley Cup, Martinez. You just can't. It resonates with you everywhere you go. And just when this season thought like this team finally got over that one last hill to climb, we finally see a cup that would last the lifetimes of kids like me born past, Y2K. It winds up just being the same old Rangers. And now, the same old offseason question to be had. What happened to the stars? Could guys like Panarin and Mika, are they built for the lights? The answer is no. All right? I don't know how many, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. I mean, what can you say? You back yourselves into this corner where you think you have these guys like, Panarin. Panarin, this is a guy who's been a star for years. They signed him from Columbus. He was a star. Hell, in Chicago, he won the Rookie of the Year in McDavid's rookie class. He was undrafted, but he brought home the Calder. He had 120 points. I think it was like he had 99. I think one other year in his career. I think it was a COVID year. Came a shorter year. He had 120 or so points. This guy had the Rangers record for most games with a point to start a season. And you look at, and I think this is where the difference is. Mika was the worst player on the Trouba is a fucking disaster. Now we hear today his ankle's broken. You know what, Trouba? You got 2 ankles. If you're not hurt in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're probably not trying. Cough, cough, Jack Roslovic and Capo Caco. And Caco has to go. I am so, it's this, I sound like a broken record. If I got to see a number 24 jersey on this team next year and the name Caco on the back of it, I just have no hope for this team. I still don't have hope. So the fact that they take more hope from me is that would be an impressive achievement. Because this fucking guy, you want to talk about a teacher's pet on steroids, this guy could commit every felony in the book and he would still have a safe spot here on this roster. So he's part of this never-ending right-wing carousel ever since they traded Buchnevich. You thought you had your answer with fan favorite Bertrana. You let him walk to Anaheim. You had a chance to bring him back along with Henrique, who's in the Cup Finals now, for Kako and a first-round pick. You didn't want to do it because your owner wants to be at his recently created Sphere out in Las Vegas. And meanwhile, Henrique's with the Edmonton Oilers of the Cup Final, who are being coached by none other than Chris Knobloch, that started this season with none other than our AHL affiliate, the Hartford Wolfpack, and had 3 games behind our bench during COVID when Quinn was in COVID protocol, and they only beat the Philadelphia Flyers 9-0. 9-0, and I think they beat LA or somebody. Oh no, those they were playing in division. They beat somebody else. But you saw in a couple games, and Hartford has been relevant for years. I'm not telling you I sit down and watch every single Hartford Wolfpack game. In fact, I don't think I've watched a single shift of it. But I see, tweet alerts, they were coming off a playoff run of their own. And year after recycled coach, and I like Laviolette, but I'll say this: if you think Gerard Gallant's or Laviolette's any different than Gerard Gallant, you could hate both, you could like both, but acting like Laviolette's better than Gallant is asinine because both their first seasons in New York ended the same way, and the only difference is Gallant's was a team ahead of schedule that shouldn't have even made the playoffs, and Laviolette's was a team that only had the best season in Ranger history. You could say as a testament to him, that's fine. But the second they hit the big stage, the second they were under the brighter lights, they caved, they withered into the same exact fucking team that Gallant had 2 years ago. And the fact that we're giving Laviolette flowers when we treated Gallant like he was some communist dictator on his way out. You saw the pictures of the taxi from when he got booted out of Florida. All right. And, bringing Vegas to their cup final in year one. And I know they didn't win it. But the misfits and all that, he got treated like a prisoner of war. And the fact that Laviolette were treating like the second coming of Scotty Bowman, I don't think is fair to Laviolette. And now you got Knobloch. You talk about a first-time coach, and I don't even have a problem with the recycled coach. You look at Peter DeBoer everywhere he goes. He seems his ceiling seems to be the Western Conference Finals, but everywhere he goes, they're a serious contender. Paul Maurice spent how many years in Winnipeg? And everybody was giving them shit for cutting ties with Burnett after he, when Quenville got dumped early and he rode the wave and they eventually stuck through and won the President's title. And they cut ties with him and they brought in Maurice. How many people gave them shit? So I don't think the problem is the recycled goalie, but you had an answer. Knobloch showed you enough. And you let him go to Edmonton early on in the year when they fired Woodcroft. They had a similar situation to the 2019 Blues, and now they're 4 wins away from a cup against the team you could have beat. And watch them beat Florida. I think Florida's a better team, but if we're talking about teams of destiny and all these parallels and everything, you got a team of destiny now because we need, as Ranger fans, we need that one last kick in the nuts. It's not a complete playoff run. If every time you think you got hit in the balls enough, they just come in with one more kick. And that's what it is rooting for this team. So a team that has no answers, they back themselves in this corner because Gordon had some love addiction with handing out no movement clauses like flyers on the street. You got Trouba has 2 years left, but you probably can't move him. Mika's got 6 years. Good luck with that. He's not a first-line center. Trocheck should be the captain of this team the second Trouba leaves. If it ever happens, it probably won't. They'll probably retire his fucking number while they're at it. All right, and that's another thing too with Kreider. Everybody, myself included, was saying they'll retire the number, and they still probably will because he'll probably shatter a lot of Rangers records throughout the year. He already has the most playoff goals of all time. But that Game 6 win against Carolina will be lost in history like a passage in a bottle. I don't have a phrase for it. It means nothing now because you didn't bring it home. You didn't bring it home, and now you handed all the material, a bulletin board material for the Islander fans. The Devil fans are laughing hysterically at you, and as they should. Because if you're looking back at the season as success, you're kidding yourself. If you're looking back at the season as a success, you're deluded. You're content with mediocrity. Because at some point, the constant Eastern Conference final exits, the constant, we had a great regular season. Enough's enough. Enough is enough. And to them, I'm asking you, Drury, I'm asking you, James Dolan, at some point, when do you think enough is going to be enough? At some point, when are you just going to stop with the beating around the bush? You're thinking, this is the core to build upon. Because it seems like the core is the reason they're always on their way out. Barclay Goodrow, I can't stand the guy for 82 games of the year, but come playoff time, he turns into Pavel Bure. All right, Lafreniere emerged onto the scene. I wanted this guy traded last year. I'll be the first person to eat crow on him. Trocheck is an absolute dog. Everybody else, and Will Cole, you got other guys, Miller, Schneider, they were solid. It's Panarin, it's Mika, it's Kreider, it's Fox, it's Trouba. These skaters that you rely on just absolutely fucking no-show. And until they're serious answers to be had with this team until there's serious changes that are made, until you stop beating around the bush and think you're a team, you're just destined to be there one day. It's going to be the same old song and dance, same old song and same old dance. And we'll have to wait and see what they do. It's going to be a long off season. All right, this is going to kind of be a make or break off season for Drury. I mean, I have my answer on him. I don't think he's the guy. I just think I think last year's deadline scared him, and I like what he did at last year's deadline. But I don't think that should have scared him off. For I think the fact that he wasn't more aggressive just showed a complete lack of confidence on his part. Thinking guys like Capo Caco all these years later, and he's got 2 points in 16 games. He is, I'm not. I could go another half hour on that guy. Oh my God! It's what? It's just like I said, it's a never-ending tease. It's just a cycle of misery. And as another year falls short, we'll have to wait and see. I don't want to keep this episode going too long, so I'm going to end it here. Mets, it's the Mets and Yankees sitting now for 3 months. If the Mets, their bullpen is words can't describe it, and the Yankees, Juan Soto, I think a blank check would be disrespectful at this point. So you're looking at Soto, Judge. Hopefully, if you're a Yankee fan, this isn't year one and only taste of the dynamic outfield, and you even see guys like Stanton showing up. And you got Garrett Cole making a rehab start tonight. So you got guys like Luis Gil looking like Harry Wood all of a sudden, and rehashing on the Mets. Their offense isn't really the problem. It's guys like Edwin Diaz can't get an out. He's not even the closer for the time being. And some of these guys like Lindor and Alonso seem to only hit when the game and the season doesn't matter. So, but we got 3 months to talk about them. So as we cap off these eulogies on the New York Knicks and the New York Rangers, the seasons that felt like were straight out of destiny, straight out of a movie. In the end, turned into the same old horror movie on loop. But as we cap things off here, I want to thank you guys for listening. I'll be out of school in a week, so and I know I've said this, but I legitimately want to commit and make serious changes to this podcast, whether it be get a full blown camera, because I've been recording on video, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the video up. So I want to get a full blown webcam and maybe a better headset and stuff like that, because I'm testing out StreamYard. So yeah, I don't know. We'll go with the flow, but as we got a summer ahead of us, no Larry O'Brien, no Lord Stanley, once again. And as we cap things off here, we'll see how those respective off seasons go. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Apples to Apples podcast. See you guys.